Hello and welcome back to PR Strategies. This module focuses on the application and assessment of Phase 1. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. So this is Bloom's taxonomy, and it's a model that illustrates how learning happens. Learners move from the bottom to the top of the pyramid. So first, we read and we memorize material. And then we construct meaning so that we understand key concepts presented by the material. Then we apply what we have learned so that we add knowledge to our long-term memory to be stored and used in increasingly complex ways. So weeks 1 through 4 in this course laid the foundation for remembering and understanding. We did this through quizzes and activities. And now you are to the point of beginning to apply what you've learned. We are going to analyze and evaluate by creating a mini case study analyzing a PR problem. We're going to do that this week for exam 1. Our final destination, though, in the course is the very top of the pyramid, where you will actually be creating your very own strategic plan. So now that you understand the basics and the reason for these types of assessments, we can begin to connect the dots and explore in a way that's more meaningful and enjoyable. Here are some things to remember as we move forward. First, this is a foundational course for PR majors. Also, keep in mind that PR professionals seeking PRSA certification often struggle with this information. It is not easy. So broadly, keep in mind the importance of candor or honesty in your formative research. This is not the time to appear biased or use stereotypes. We must learn the organization inside and out. So what is the organization already doing? Can we help them, or will we drag our reputation down with them? You should ask yourself, what do you risk by jumping in without all the facts? This was the emphasis for activity 1 and 2. Some of you, though, use language that implied bias for or against the client, or language that over-dramatized the situation. Make sure that you're neutral in your language. Remember the CSI analogy, and don't act like a rookie at their very first crime scene. Keep calm and do your job. Imagine yourself in a courtroom answering questions about your formative research. So remember, in real life, a strategic plan is a strategic plan. They're all pretty much the same, but every company may have its own approach. You will learn their system, and this will just be a realignment of your knowledge. At this point, it's just important that you understand that companies often fail if they fail to adequately articulate and communicate the current situation, the organization, and strategic publics. And it's your job to be unbiased and to approach this formative research phase in preparation for phase 2 when we start to talk about strategies. So make sure that you understand that mixing up things like linkage definitions won't cause as many problems as not creating integrated, focused, and reality-based strategies that link back to the organization's mission and vision. So this is how to study for exam 1. Please understand that I would love for all of you to get an A on this exam. I want to set you up for success, but this information is difficult. It's not easy to comprehend and apply, and that's really what I'm asking you to do. So I do encourage you to spend the first part of the week reviewing before you go and open up the exam. So here's kind of my best practices for studying for this exam. The first is to review. So you should review quiz 1 through 4. Specifically, look back and revisit the questions that you missed and understand why you missed them. But it's, of course, a great reminder to stop and go over questions that you got right. You need to commit those to memory as well. Then I want you to go back and look at activity 1 through 3. Please know that I have left you comments either on your document or in the rubric comments. So if you didn't get full credit, you need to go back in there and see why. Address any of your incorrect answers and use them as a study guide. Second is outline. So outline the learning objectives from slides 6 through 8. Those are coming up after this slide, and use them as a study guide. And do not forget that you have created fabulous reading notes. So review them, look at them, add things to them, highlight them, whatever you need to do, and then you'll be ready to use those during your exam period. Then you need to study. So study pages 18 through 19 in the textbook. So this is that bird's eye view of PR strategies. And I think sometimes students forget to step back. Remember we talked about being in the helicopter and flying over and then coming down and landing? Well, we need to come back up again and remember the big plan here. Finally, you should be able to summarize each step in as few words as possible. So if you can do this, this means that you've learned a lot, you're able to talk about PR strategies succinctly and formative research succinctly. Ask yourself broadly, what does each step tell us? And then finally, and I think this is a really good plan, is to teach a friend a few key takeaways from each step. So you can also do this by talking to your pet or a plant or the wall, whatever you need to do. But if you have the ability to teach somebody something, then that is a great indicator that you understand what you're doing. So the next 3 slides outline the learning objectives from weeks 1 through 4. I'm not going to read them to you, but you need to use them to review the material. So PR without formative research is like shooting in the dark. And you'll see from this cartoon that it is a person who's been blindfolded and is trying to hit an archery target and has not been able to make any successful contact with the target. So this refers to trying to hit a target without being able to see it. Shooting in the dark does. And in the context of strategic planning, designing a program without necessary research is like shooting in the dark. And it is never, ever a good idea. Remember that with strategic planning, we should view these steps as a process. They're not a series of disconnected steps. So this really brings us to the conclusion of phase 1, and this is where we're putting together all of our formative research, and that is the point of this case study and exam 1. So here on this slide, I'm going to go over the details of exam 1. I strongly encourage you to take notes, reach out to me if you don't understand any of these instructions, especially prior to starting your exam. So the exam will be available on demand starting Wednesday at 8 a.m. and it has to be completed and submitted by Sunday before 11:59 p.m. You will have 60 minutes to complete it, and you are allowed 1 attempt. The exam is worth 50 points, and I just want to go ahead and lay it out there for you that A's on this exam are rare. I want you to study very hard. The exam will assess your ability to apply what you've learned in the critical evaluation of a PR scenario in case study 1. All of that information about case study 1 is located here within the week 5 module. So the case and the worksheet are both available to you so that you can conduct some secondary research and prepare for the exam. I can't stress this enough. Do not try to skip this. If you do, you will not do well on the exam. So you need to read the case study. It's pretty brief, but I would spend a good chunk of time working on the worksheet. It's going to pay off for you a lot on the exam. As a reminder, this exam is completely open book, open computer, open notes. Please have your reading notes ready as you begin the exam. It's composed primarily of essay questions, and all of the questions have an indication of word count that I'm looking for on each one. So while they might say essay questions, in some cases I'm really looking for a short answer, 100 to 200 words. Essay questions must be answered thoroughly, though, and they need to be in your own words for full credit. As you only have an hour to complete this exam, I am more lenient on things like typos and misspellings. So just do your best to get as much information written down as possible. I do want to remind you that questions will be randomly distributed and each exam will be unique, and this is to prohibit any sort of academic dishonesty. Please understand that collaborating or sharing answers with other students is prohibited and it will be reported. So do not collaborate or share answers. Do not risk your academic integrity. I will have to report you should I find that you have been sharing answers. Also, just be aware that in this day and age, all of your information is cataloged with time and date stamps and even location stamps of where it is that you are taking your exam from. So if I look and you have the same IP address, then I can tell that you have been most likely collaborating with somebody. So I strongly encourage you to just make a plan for the week that works for you. Find a quiet place and a good time to take your exam before Sunday. And best of luck on the exam. So these are some of the most common mistakes that are seen on exam one, and these are problems to anticipate. So if you kind of know what the common pitfalls are, then you can learn to avoid them and submit a well-executed and prepared exam one. The first is the inability to articulate the client versus the agency. I've seen this a little bit on assignment 2 and a little bit on assignment 3 already. You are actually acting as the agency. So the agency is the organization who was hired to create the campaign. The client, on the other hand, is the organization for whom the campaign was created. So you need to consider that you work for an agency, a PR firm that has been hired to work for a client. The second problem I see is confusion with the time frame. So with all case studies, you need to remember that cases happened in the past. Cases, though, are completed by reconstructing what happened at the time of the case in as much detail as possible. The third problem I see is confusing opportunity, as we've defined opportunity in step 1, with opportunities in the SWOT analysis. And I especially want to remind you and caution you, make sure that you understand what is internal and external to the organization in the SWOT. That was another common misstep that I saw. And then finally, failure to conduct adequate secondary research. So yes, you have an exam this week, but you have some pre-work to do. If you just decide to wing it on Sunday and take the exam, I can guarantee you that you will not do well. Because in a 60-minute time frame, you're not going to have time to go back and read the case study, complete the worksheet, and be adequately prepared. So please, please, please get started on this module as soon as possible. Break it out into bite-sized chunks. Make a study plan and calendar the date and time in which you plan to take your exam and clear the decks. So if you live with roommates, if you have family, if you have little ones at home, make a plan so that you can have 60 minutes uninterrupted time. Please also remember that completing this phase 1, it's an imperfect process. So we have some skills that we need to adhere to, that we have learned about, but you're really demonstrating your critical thinking skills on exam 1. And here's a final reminder about original work. So presenting someone else's work as your own is plagiarism. Any evidence of plagiarism, collusion, or cheating will result in an F for the exam and potentially the course. It may also lead to disciplinary action at the college and/or university level. Please understand that if plagiarism is suspected in any way, I will report it, and all of the disciplinary action is decided at the college or university level. It is not decided by me. It is out of my hands at that point. So just don't do it. Learning to write is learning to think. So you don't know anything clearly unless you can state it in writing. And that is a quote from leadership expert John C. Maxwell. So I talked about this a couple slides back, that while I'm not going to be as strict about GSP and typographical errors, points will be deducted if it is excessive, and that is all at my discretion. And while I understand that you're going to be under a time crunch and trying to get as much on the page as you can, you still just can't throw caution to the wind. If I can't understand what you're trying to say, it's going to be very difficult for me to award full credit points. You want to focus on clear, concise, and persuasive written communication. And a way to prepare for the exam as far as the GSP goes is you can plan to write in Word, or you can use Grammarly, and then you can copy and paste those answers into the test format in Blackboard. And also you can check out the writing resources in Blackboard in preparation for this exam. Thank you so much for your attention during this slideshow to get you ready for exam 1. I know that you have a lot ahead of you this week in studying and researching and preparing to take exam 1, but I have full faith in all of you that you have the tools available that you need. So don't be afraid to go back into previous week's modules and brush up on any skills that you are unfamiliar with. I wish you all luck on the exam.